Hi everyone. In the 6th century, early 6th century, the times in the Middle East were very difficult. And by Middle East, I mean not only Palestine and the surrounding environs, but also places like Iraq, Iran, and many of those surrounding areas were replete with both political and religious confusion. At the time in the Byzantine Empire, the Monophysite heresy was going full strength, raising its head. And in the other areas, particularly in Persia during the time of the Sasanian dynasty, there was also a bit of a religious melange going on at that time. Now, one of the most notable rulers of the Persian dynasty in the early 500s was a man named Khosrow. Now, Khosrow is someone who is regarded by history as being very progressive in his policies of trying to make the lives better for his subjects, but he was also someone who wanted to expand his empire, and because of an early experience with some of the Byzantines as he was being brought up, he really did not have a fond feeling for them. And because of this, there was a time when the Emperor Justinian I, of course, who did wondrous things in the Byzantine Empire, was negotiating with Khosrow in order to come to an accord of some kind, whereas there would be peace. And in fact, it is said that Justinian paid 11,000 pounds of gold in order to help persuade Khosrow that this was a good thing. Well, Khosrow accepted, but it didn't last long, and he ended up breaking this particular accord. Well, this is just a little bit of a preamble to give you an idea of the type of environment that our saint for today, on July 13th, the Holy Orthodox Church commemorates the wondrous memory of a saint named Golinduc. Now, Golinduc actually took the name Mary in baptism, but she was indeed Persian, raised in that empire where her father was actually the magus for one of the chief areas in the empire and was quite close to Khosrow. Well, Mary would have been brought up as basically a Zoroastrian because that was the predominant religion in Persia at the time. But she had a number of rather extraordinary visions, and one was where an angel of the Lord appeared to her. She fell into an ecstasy just suddenly. Now, we might wonder, why would that happen to a pagan when it doesn't happen to us, right? Well, obviously, God knew her heart and knew the innermost desires of her heart. And in this vision, he showed her flames everywhere, with many of her ancestors that were Zoroastrian being caught up in these flames. And then the angel showed her the heavenly abode, where the Christians were worshiping in all glory and peace and harmony. And Mary, of course, wanted that particular side of things. Well, the vision ended. She came to her senses, but because of the profundity and importance of what she had seen, she eventually became a Christian and was baptized with the name Mary. However, her father still knew her as Golinduc, and when he heard about what had happened, he was furious and even took her to Khosrow, who then said, okay, if I'm not happy with this, I'm not happy that you're adopting the religion of my enemies, the Byzantines, right now, and so off you go into a fortress. And indeed, she did get sent off into a fortress where she suffered and was ill-treated for probably 18 years or so. So it was a very difficult thing for her. Now, while she was in that exile, she had a number of experiences that were very unusual. Evidently, there was some type of reptile that was predominant in that area and was terrorizing some of the citizens, but the reptile was captured and put into a pit, and Mary was thrown into that pit with it. Well, as we see so often in the lives of the saints, the holiness of the saint tends to predominate the more aggravated instincts of an animal. And after 4 months, this reptile became her companion, would follow her whenever she walked around, wherever she went in that fortress that she was in. Well, after a while, she was let out of that particular fortress, like I said, at least 18 years, and she was brought before the son of Khosros, who had taken over. And he was still not very happy with her. He had her tortured so hard she was whipped, it was said, that one of her breasts was torn off. She underwent all sorts of difficulties, finally was thrown into a brothel where there were a number of men who were there wanting to violate her, but because of the grace of God, they were unable because they couldn't find her, even though she was standing right in front of them, because the grace of God had blinded them to where she happened to be. Now, this was something pretty astonishing back then, and would be astonishing now, but is hardly unknown in the lives of the saints when they're put in these particularly difficult situations. So, finally, after a period of time, she was released, but not before another angelic visitation where an angel appeared to her and had a sword and appeared to be going to slice her head off. Well, what happened was it wounded her on the neck and made her bleed over her garments. And as it turned out, many people were cured by touching those garments from the saints' sanctified blood. After this, she did finally depart for Jerusalem, and when she was in Jerusalem, she found that the heresy of Monophysitism was everywhere, and in fact, one of the patriarchs of Antioch, Severus, who was eventually condemned for his heresy, was in charge at the time. And although he was what was called a moderate Monophysite and not an extreme one, still it was Monophysitism, and she did not know whether or not she should commune in any of those churches. Again, an angel appeared to her and showed her 2 glasses, and one glass was filled with very clear, sparkling water, and the other was kind of murky. And the angel said, "This is the difference between orthodoxy and heresy." And so she did not commune in those churches. Well, she did develop a reputation, however, for sanctity, and eventually the Patriarch of Constantinople wanted her to come to that town in order to give her blessing to the emperor who had been elected there. But Golinduc, or Mary, said, "No, because I have foreseen that I'm not long for this world." And sure enough, near Nisibis, she reposed in the Lord, and her relics were collected and deposited between 2 churches of St. Irene, which is where, as far as we know, she still resides today. So this is an astounding story, and one not heard too often, about an amazing young woman who followed the promptings of the Lord, just as St. Paul did, and just as a quick and amazing way as you can imagine on the road to Damascus. In this same way, Golinduc became Mary, following our Lord Jesus Christ, and through all the trials and tribulations that she endured, she no doubt resides with him today in the kingdom of heaven. Bye-bye.